How are you, man? I'm Gil Roth, and you're listening to a bonus episode of my Virtual Memory Show podcast. This is a COVID check-in episode where I record with a past guest of the Virtual Memory Show to find out how they're holding up during the pandemic. As far as how I'm doing, it's a weird morning. I woke up in the middle of the night with a combo of anxiety and the physical effects of the last 2 days' compulsive behavior, which was part of the anxiety, and couldn't get back to sleep for a while. So while I kind of screwed up my journal, then podcast, then running routine, because I got a bunch of calls to do this morning, that really throws me off my rhythm. I'll try to run at lunchtime instead, but I really prefer getting out early in the morning before other people are up and about. So I'm kind of bummed about that. But at the same time, I am trying not to beat myself up too much because that just reinforces the crappy behavior that led to the cycle of all this, which led to my getting up late, missing my run, etc. But enough of my armchair behavior modification. Let's get to today's show. Writer Kate Maruyama joined me from LA this weekend, and she's going to be part of the Writing Better Futures in Times of Crisis virtual event, which is going to be hosted by Bookswell tomorrow night. That's May 14th, 2020, for you time travelers in the audience. The event's got a great lineup of writers on tap to talk about the uses and abuses of utopian and dystopian models in fiction. And Kate and I get into that question of whether writers have a sort of responsibility to try to frame a better world right about now. Anyway, there'll be links to the event in the show and episode notes for this one, so you'll be able to register for it. Kate's very much immersed in community, in writing, teaching, and activism, and her hug game is strong. So I was a little concerned about how she was coping with this whole thing, with social distancing, quarantine, etc. But she's adapting pretty darned well, as you're going to hear. As caveats go, her mic isn't as good as mine, and there's a little echo bleeding over her headphones of my part. Couldn't really remove that. Here's me and Kate. How are you dealing? How are things going for you?
We are very lucky. We're still employed. And I don't know, it's a bigger thing. I think a lot of writers that I know, especially because we tend to be empathic, are very weary from processing the news and news of friends and family and people affected, and all of that takes a toll, and just general fear. But there are good days and bad days. I mean, we do know that we're very lucky to be living in a house that we don't have to worry about landlords kicking us out of. And we're very lucky that the kids are able to continue their schools. One's in college and one's in high school remotely, and that we have the technology to do that. So, you know, it is what it is.
Which is our existential moment that we're all
it's like you try not to overthink it, and you also try to remember that nobody's being sent away to war. You know, the stuff that our parents went through is not what's going on here. This is just weirdness.
Yeah, I mean, my mother was 1940 in London in time for the Blitz. Dad was 38 in Bucharest and was a refugee at the age of like 8 or 9, trying to get to Palestine, then Israel. So yeah. Sitting on the sofa watching Netflix, not really so bad.
Yeah, you know? Exactly. You can't really complain, even though you may feel pretty lousy and weird. You definitely can't complain. Yeah, my mom lost her dad in World War II when she was 9. Pearl Harbor happened, and she just never saw him again. He left. He was a submarine captain. And my dad, I think, he did all right. He was growing up in Florida, and his dad was too old to join the war. He actually went and worked for the Red Cross at the end of the war to help clean up in Japan. Mm-hmm. But this is not the same thing.
Yeah. All things considered, we get by okay. And we will get to what you've been doing on Netflix, later in the conversation.
These are the important things.
Again, just understanding how people are coping and dealing. But how is LA in particular? I know LA is a multitude of neighborhoods and not a coherent city. But is there an experience or a vibe you pick up on in the city, and how does it compare to friends who are elsewhere?
Yeah, I mean, I
Hearing?
do correspond regularly. I have a lot of friends in New York in very small apartments. So we do have a bit more space here, and the weather has been pretty lovely. So that part's been good. And I checking with my friends all over LA, and all of us are kind of, doing the same. We're probably in the best situation because our city closed down so early. The numbers are not as staggering, even though they are alarming. And the endlessness is getting to everybody, but we definitely have nice weather to celebrate in. And we've also been able to plant things. I think earlier, the East Coast, you guys were shut down in kind of lousy weather. We've been able to grow things so far, which has been good. So
They're getting snow in upstate New York today.
yeah,
Things are nuts. But
yeah. We're a little alarmed by when we see crowds of people. My son works downtown, and I drove through the park one day, and I was like shocked by the number of people out without masks and things. But in our neighborhood, people seem to be behaving pretty well and wearing masks and trying to give each other space as they walk by. So,
are there aspects that surprise you in terms of how people are functioning, either good or bad? I mean, you say being alarmed when you see a group of people, but
yeah, we more think about when we hear, friends who have family members who've come down on it. My son has a friend whose mom had it and is hospitalized, and we're not quite sure of the news there and that sort of thing. I think that's obviously worse than, I don't know, you can't really police people and what they're doing. But it is affecting a lot of folks. I think it's like we always get flu season later. I think we're kind of getting the infection rate on this one later.
Yeah. Well, New York, because of the geography, the population, et cetera, it was going to concentrate there, and, New Jersey were the spillover basically. So, our two states are just a goddamn nightmare, but, we're dealing in a different way.
I've been checking it a lot with friends, because I know that's the one thing is like when you're going, I have a friend who in Manhattan who got it and came out the other side, so that was good. You try not to be too much of a nudge, but you do try to make sure they're okay. So I've just been sort of writing a lot more letters, emails. Writing a lot more emails and that are very letter-like. I mean, it feels very they're a lot more formal than I used to just shoot emails out to friends, and a lot more detailed.
And I, in our correspondences, you, I don't want to say you were verbose in a negative way, but you wrote fully when we would correspond a couple of years ago.
Yeah, I think, it's
maybe you were just
like
saving everything up, but
conversations. You also might have written me in the summer when I don't get much writing done, and so my emails tend to be punishingly long. But yeah, and I'm catching up with folks that I haven't in a while. I know that's been kind of across the board happening for a lot of people.
Sure.
Is catching up with friends from childhood, seeing how they're holding up, and a lot of folks here have moved from other places, so catching up with people where they grew up.
Yeah, see, I live in my childhood home, and I have no interest in how anybody I grew up with is doing. So it's more staying in touch with people like you, whom I met in my later days.
Right. Yeah.
Now, you mentioned getting writing done. Are you getting writing done?
Yeah.
Are you able to? Listen, anything is an improvement over my writing. So, just say, sure, Gil, it's better than you.
It's been alarming because I'm a workhorse, and I usually always am working on something. And I was working on a novella I was very close to done with when this all came down. And the only reason I was able to get back in and finish it is that I have 2 novel classes that I teach online, and I'm demanding, 5 pages a week from them. And they submit up to 15 pages for workshop. And I just felt like a complete fraud for demanding this of them. So I did go back in and finish the novella, but it seems like then I was like, oh, it's done. And I sent it off to someone to read, and went back to short stories. But there's so many other things to do, There's a lot more spacing out. And also procuring food for the 4 of us, because my 2 grown kids are with us, so it's a lot of food. It seems like that seems to fill the days.
Yeah. Do you have best practices for groceries and all that stuff? Have they changed?
No, we go Well, it's kind of once a week. We took a week off when the mayor of LA asked nobody to shop. And, but we go very early in the morning at Trader Joe's because there are a lot fewer people. And, that's every other week. And then we go to Smart and Final, and my daughter goes with, and we mask up, and we're super cautious. And yeah, you come home and find yourself a bit rattled from the experience. That's for sure.
Yeah, I've said this on the show a bunch of times lately, but I haven't been inside another building in like 6 weeks.
Oh, wow.
Besides my house. Like my wife's done some grocery shopping. We don't consume that much to begin with.
Right.
Things are getting delivered occasionally. And I was looking around. I'm like, I haven't crossed the threshold of a doorway besides my house in like 6 weeks. So
yeah, my husband's been working at home, and he works very long days, sometimes 12 to 14 hours, just because the technology for what he does, he's an animator, is a bit more challenging when it's not in the central place. So I'm sorry, I just got distracted there. He hasn't been out of, we've gone for like some neighborhood walks and stuff, but yeah, definitely has not been in another building. I think that's like a whole other surreal thing. But going into those places, like my son works downtown, and I drive him down once a week. That's alarming too. Like a deserted downtown Los Angeles is super post-apocalyptic feeling, very much like Omega Man. You expect Charlton Heston to run out.
Oh, Tom Tomorrow's been talking about his, he lives on the Central Park West, a block or two west of the park. And he said there's just nobody. You step outside, the streets are empty. There's no cars. It's just surreal to see New York with, nobody on the streets.
Yeah, I have a friend who does a bike route there, and he sends me photographs. It's just astonishing. It definitely, it's really funny because there's a part of me that's like, this would be a perfect time to record a zombie movie. But obviously nobody can work on a crew together. So I have a lot of cinematographer friends out of work. But yeah, it's kind of beautiful, and it's kind of terrifying. I took my daughter down just to get her out of the house, kept her in the car while we dropped my son off. And she said she just didn't want to go down there again until people are out and about again.
Yeah, it could be disorienting in a lot of respects, just the things that we're used to taken out of context, or again, like when you see them with looking like movie sets as opposed to real life. It's got to be disorienting.
Yeah.
So tell me about teaching, and teaching online as opposed to in person.
It's actually gone well. I'm teaching workshops only. And so we had already gotten into our rhythm of, we workshop 2 or 3 pieces a day, and everybody talks. And we do tend to, instead of everybody giving their notes all at once in order, we do tend to overlap a little bit, but the overlap's not too much for Zoom. So those classes are actually really great. I mean, it keeps me feeling a little bit relevant. And it'll be interesting. This summer I'm teaching a BA class that I've taught before, American Horror Story, online for Antioch University. And that'll be interesting as well, because it's a 3-hour class in the evening, and Zoom gets tiring. I don't know what it is about it, but it does get tiring after 2 hours. Sure. So I've actually created a component where there'll be an asynchronous chat that composes that 3rd hour, because so people can take breaks. But it's been really nice to sharpen the brain a little bit, which feels definitely dull. I have a friend who said that there's a theory that when humans go into a state of fear, the brain goes into panic mode and needs to pay attention to a ton of little details for survival. And so the big deep thinking that we ordinarily do is just gone. It feels that way. I don't know if that's true. It reminds me a lot of grief brain. After you lose someone in your family, you get really spacey. That spaciness is really there. So teaching online definitely gets my brain back in action, and I always feel pretty fabulous when I finish class. And it's nice too, because the students are grateful. A lot of them are living in their own apartments. A lot of them have completely lost their work, so they're definitely I'm not charging them this time. It's more important to me that they keep writing. So.
And are they all working on zombie or pandemic fiction?
No, thank God. It's funny too, because I have one class that it seems like they just come together this way. It seems like almost everybody is working on something that is either magic realism or science fiction or genre. But no zombie apocalypse stories, thank God.
I'm sure that'll come next term once people are starting to process all this. But
it's so funny to me that you can't predict what people will do, because I heard that people were watching Contagion, and that just seems completely crazy to me. It's like the last thing in the world I want to do, but for some people that actually helps them process. I think people just process in different ways.
I think the vibe was they were watching Contagion before things got really hairy, like when we theoretically knew things would get weird, but we didn't know this was going to happen.
Right.
That Contagion was the thing to prepare you for it. Once things started to get into lockdown mode, I wonder how advisable that is. But
I think some people, I have a friend who when she's pregnant, she reads extremely violent stuff about children and things, because worst case scenario helps her like beat down her own fears. It's astonishing to me, but I think that's just how some people are wired. I'm just more in like denial. I don't want to, if I'm doing this in real life, I do not want to be doing this in my escapist life.
Now, did any of the FNSF and horror in your background prepare you for any of this? In terms of just how weird this is. It's not a zombie thing. It's, hey, everybody, stay at home.
Right.
Don't go anywhere or do anything. Yeah.
And yet some people are behaving as if it's a zombie thing. I would say that your basic hoarders and some of the bad behavior at supermarkets. Oh, gosh, we were down in Little Tokyo. I dropped off my son, and so we figured we would go to the grocery store there. And the security guard was very sweet, and he handed us wipes and stuff as we went in. And as we left, there was a kerfuffle because he's not allowed to let people in without masks. And someone spit on him because of this. It was just, you do see the worst behavior. For the most part, people are behaving very well and taking care of each other. But not to like make an awkward segue, but I was wondering about the zombie narrative and how that does affect society, and if that's any good.
Well, Scott Edelman, I recorded with Scott Edelman a week or two ago, and he's written his fair share of zombie novels or zombie fiction. He said, the one thing I never really factored in was a portion of the population saying they wanted to go outside and get bitten. That really didn't occur to me before. So, you think you're going to cover all the bases, and then it turns out, no, I want to go out there and get bitten by a zombie.
I want to do things just the regular way. Yeah, it's pretty crazy. I'm really, really shocked whenever there are folks, and sometimes we'll see a lot of like clusters of teenagers who are not wearing masks and are hanging out outside their family groups, and it's like, really?
Yeah, but I'm going to cut them some slack compared to adults who do this. Like teenagers, imagine you were a teenager and this was part of the constraints of your life. You would act out somehow, I assume. I would just sit around and read comic books all the time and consider this heaven, but normal people would have issues. But adults who are pushing for, we need to be out there. I'm like, okay, you're kind of doing the opposite of anything sane, but that's your prerogative because America,
Right.
But tell me about the Writing Better Futures event, Writing Better Futures in Times of Crisis event this week.
So Cody Cisco, I hung out with at AWP in Texas. We ate a just huge amount of barbecue together.
As you should.
Yeah, he's a lovely guy, and he runs the Bookswell organization that has local events in Los Angeles. And he also writes science fiction, but he doesn't know a lot of science fiction writers. So I was talking to him about sort of getting him into ReaderCon and going to different cons and things like that. And so he wrote to me and asked if I wanted to organize a reading or something. And so I figured this would be a good way for him to meet folks. And what's nice is because it's online, it doesn't have to be only local people. Sure. So we put together a conversation that is kind of around what you and I were just discussing. How does what it is that we've read sort of affect how society behaves, and also how do we have an obligation as writers to write a positive future because of our potential influence on what people read? And so I instantly thought of PJ Manny, who started a site called The New Mythos on Facebook. Not a site, but a place for people to converse, because it came up when she was on a panel with Nisi Shawl and some others with futurism. Which comes out of Afrofuturism. I think Afrofuturists were the first to sort of fully understand that if you create a more positive future around African American people, you can, perhaps actualize it. So that conversation has been going on, and Matt Krussel's in that group as well. And so I reached out to him and Nisi Shaw and Cecil Castellucci here in LA, and also Cherise Smith, who wrote a book called Orleans, which takes place as if there were more hurricanes in New Orleans. And
give it time.
New Orleans gets cut off. Right, exactly. New Orleans gets cut off because there is a virus down there. It's not a zombie virus. It's a virus that just kills people. And the earth actually starts to take it back, and it starts to regenerate, which seems super relevant for what's going on now. Because without people, like
the wildlife
wildlife and the sea life starts to regenerate. So anyway, it'll be a really interesting conversation. I'm excited to hear. I'm just moderating, but I'm excited to hear what all these people say. And also, Cody, you'll get to meet them all virtually, so that'll be nice.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you mentioned, reaching out to so many people. Do you find well, same thing I've asked a whole bunch of people during the course of this stuff. Is it the same talking with me on a microphone like this as it is just sitting at a table and having a conversation? And, do we get an approximation versus the real connection?
Yeah, it's different. But on the other hand, I have a friend who moved to Scotland about 3 years ago, and he and I had a Zoom session. It was like, oh my God, we could have been doing this all along. I think I've gotten more comfortable with Zoom. It doesn't feel like your awkward pauses feel a little more awkward. I think there's something about the energy of people in a room that you're kind of okay not talking for a spell. So yeah, it is definitely different. I'd give anything for, a real sit down over coffee with a friend. That'd be amazing, In
fact, what con are you going to miss the most?
Oh, I'm going to miss ReaderCon because it's coming up right now. Get to see you and get to see a bunch of other folks that I don't get to see outside of that space. And the Nebulas are coming up, and that was surprising because I went last year and there was a big ReaderCon contingent there, which was nice because the East folks and the West Coast getting together is always really fun for me.
Yeah, because it's less of the Biggie at Tupac thing. That's going back 20 plus years. I know it's a dumb joke, but I figured
right? Yeah.
I had to throw it in. But place you're missing the most? Just place
I'm
really
missing the local lit scene here, even though I have been attending a lot of Zoom replacements, because I got to say, the Los Angeles lit scene, their hug game is on. They just rock at hugs. And you get very used to seeing your friends and catching up with folks just in these spaces. And hearing amazing words. I always find the poets here completely inspiring, and the fiction folk and other writers. So that sort of energy in a room I'm really missing.
And the general sense of activism, the things you engaged in previously, trying to keep that continuity while keeping the family
My activist
safe.
friends are on it, and some of them are struggling as well, sort of, with what can they do. The Nikkei progressives out of Little Tokyo have put together backpacks and masks and things because they have managed to, through lawyers and such, there are going to be a bunch of people, about 150, released from Adelante, which is the internment camp for ICE, basically, here in California. Even though Gavin Newsom says that he's no longer sponsoring that, we seem to have a lot of people locked up for reasons of papers. It's just insane to me. So anyway, they're getting out to nothing. And so the Nikkei progressives have put stuff together, and I've assisted in what ways I can. I have a friend who made like 90 masks for them. They're just giving them the basics that they need to sort of survive as they get out. I'm hoping that they find places for folks to stay. I'm certain people will go back to their homes, but also when you have been incarcerated and can't pay your rent, that means you no longer have a home to go back to.
Sure.
Yeah. But as far as me, I feel a little bit helpless, because I'm trying to see where I can help in small ways. But yeah, it's everybody being ordered home makes our at-risk folks really super at risk. What's nice is my son works in Little Tokyo. They seem to have it together there, the different organizations working together in community. He works for Cafe Dulce, and they have been working with the local food places nearby to put together lunch boxes for people affected by joblessness. And they give away about 200 every weekend. So that's really nice. It's nice to see communities coming up together to take care of things that the federal government just isn't or can't.
Yeah.
That's been really nice.
I'm not going to editorialize about that too much because I'm here in New Jersey and it's, wow, you're telling us it's just up to us. Okay.
Oh, right. Yeah. But I also have a friend working for the Los Angeles gosh, I'm like losing all the brain is a little mushy these days. Anyway, for LA Renters Union. And they've been helping because there are landlords who have not been listening to the mayor's orders and go ahead and are evicting their tenants at this time. And they will organize and actually get the cops to come out and make sure that the people are not evicted and to deal with landlords. So that's been positive too.
And did you have a compression/decompression period of, okay, this is the new reality. How the hell am I staying sane? Or did you find yourself adjusting relatively easily to that?
Oh, I'm not adjusted yet.
Yeah, I figured not, but I thought I'd be charitable and pretend.
Yeah, the first couple of weeks were really hard on all of us. My daughter realized she lost her senior year of high school. Everybody, some of my kids' teachers have ghosted on them, which makes it rather difficult to obtain the credit they need to keep going. They have some excellent teachers as well. And we were learning to take our classes online. My husband teaches at Art Center College of Design, and it was just a big adjustment, and there was a lot more stress. So in a way, we've kind of gotten better at doing the day-to-day, but I do find it goes day by day. Some days you're like, oh, I'm going to get all these things done. And other days it's just like, I think I just need to lie around and watch telly for a while or, So my students keep me honest and keep me doing some things, but there are other days that just slide by,
Yeah, no, I'm balancing that stuff with the nature of my day job. There are certain things that really, really have to get done, and we're trying to coordinate pandemic response among pharma companies, et cetera. And then there's also but I'm just doing all of this from my house in New Jersey, and I'm not actually in any of these facilities that are making the stuff. And I'm if I'm not doing something, do they think I'm not doing something? You start to lose your mind a little bit.
There's a real pressure of productivity, which feels really unreal in this time. We were just talking about that. It's like then if you're at home, you must produce and must be doing. And the truth is time has taken on new, different meaning. I don't know. There's a book called Age of Miracles. I can't remember the writer on it, but she talks about, it's about the planet going off its axis a little and time changing and how everybody gets really weird. And it reminds me most of what I think we're experiencing here.
In this case, so much of this is just self-generated. My guys are like, we know you're working. It's cool. We know that you're not 24 hours cranking out, syringes and pills. That's our job. You do your thing. We're all helping fund it. Yeah. But still, you just get the anxiety because, anxiety.
And I think also you feel less. I think that the commute that we used to do and all of that commuting, like that took a lot of time. And so it's funny when you realize your workday is a lot shorter because of not traveling.
Well, that for me, I never had that, or at least not for the last 6 years, because I work from home. I would just have these occasional trips down to DC, but that was the extent of it. The weird part for me is the realization that I was putting a shit ton of time into just driving for the podcast. Like
Yeah.
going to New York on weekends or going upstate or down to Pennsylvania to sit down with somebody for an hour and a half and come back, going to ReaderCon for a weekend and coming back with a few shows. It's okay, I don't have any of that time or expense anymore. So I guess doing these daily like this isn't that much worse. I also give myself I don't go back and edit these episodes the way I do with like the full length ones. It's just, we record unless there's something glaring in there. I just do my intro the next morning, post everything and go. But yeah, that to me was one of I guess I was spending a chunk of time just driving into New York, driving to 96th Street, taking the subway wherever. And, now all of that is off the board. Do you have any big writing or reading project you were looking to get to as long as you're trapped in home?
What's funny is, I'm finishing up for the Shirley Jackson Awards. I'm on the jury this time.
Oh, it's always the Shirley Jackson Award. Did you watch a trailer yet, by the way?
For what?
The Shirley Jackson biopic with Elizabeth Moss and Michael Stahlberg.
Oh, no.
Yes, go check that out. It came out like yesterday or the day before. Go look that up.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
Anyway.
I love Elizabeth Moss, but she better do it right.
Just watch that trailer. You'll be a better judge than I. But yeah, the movie's just called Shirley. Go. I think it might be about Shirley Bassey, but I think it's Shirley Jackson. I'm just kidding. Go. No. Tell me about the awards.
That'll be really interesting. Yeah. So that was a challenge because I also found it hard to read in those early weeks for sure. But fortunately, I'd done the bulk of it already. But the board graciously gave us an extra month to sort ourselves out because, we were all kind of reeling. So that part's good. And I also have assigned a novel to each of my novel classes. So I'm catching up with that now. I have some friends' books on hold. There's definitely a pile, but I am finding I'm getting better at reading as time progresses. It was a little hard to dive in as deeply.
My first month. Yeah, my first month, I could not finish Kurt Anderson's History of How America Went Haywire. And then I just read Matt Ruff's 88 Names and blew through that in like a day and thought, oh, that's what I needed. Okay.
Yeah, I remembered how to read. Yeah. So I'm hoping that this means that I will get some more rich reading done now that I've sort of been forced into it. And fortunately, the books are all good. And I have friends launching books in this craziness, so I'm dying to get to their books as well.
Yeah, has there been any, I don't say consensus, but just how authors are dealing with, wow, this is my life's project and it's about to be dropped into a maelstrom of
It's very hard because there's a little bit of guilt because they aren't directly suffering from in the ways that other people are. But the truth is it stinks, if you've been working on a book for so many years and it's coming out and you cannot do everything that you were gearing up to do, the tour and the going to bookstores and things like that. There are a lot of online events coming up around it, but it's just people are like, you need to pivot. And I think it's a little harder than that when it is something that you've been working on for so long.
Yeah, that's. I was just recording with Cassandra Kaw earlier today, who episode should come out the day before yours. Apparently, Twitch streaming, those people who play video games and live stream it, they're hosting readings. She's organized. Yeah, I had the same reaction.
Amazing! Wow.
They read a lot, and so they're organizing readings with authors, and they've got all these subscribers, and they listen to the books, and they comment, and they interact with the writer.
I'm hoping that the numbers will show because I'm hoping the numbers will show that more people actually have access to the book because they are online venues. When you go to a bookstore, you might have only 5 or 10 people show up. Right. So while it physically you're missing a lot, I think I'm hoping people will reach more readers. my friend Maggie Downs is coming out with a book on the 12th called Braver Than You Think. That's a beautiful memoir about her mom's battle with Alzheimer's and how she went to travel to all the places that her mom wanted to get to in her stead. So that's going to be a good one, just to throw a plug out there to a different pool of listeners. And it's also great because you travel around the world in the book, and she pays attention to the right stuff in there. So if anybody wants that one, it's great. It's out from Counterpoint Press on the 12th.
Cool. Now, given that your mom lived a hell of a life, is there anywhere that she wanted to go that she never got to that you would want to?
Gosh, I don't think so. She liked to travel places that she'd been before. Yeah. And she had been many places. So, I'm certain she would have loved to go to Florida again. I'm certain she would have loved to go to India again. But, I think she did it right. She and my dad definitely, once we were through college, just hit the ground running and traveled all over the place, and went back to London and stuff. And then they would go visit my brother wherever he was. So South Africa and Warsaw and all this other, because he's an international journalist. So I think she traveled plenty, which was good.
And any dream place for you now that you can't go anywhere for the moment?
Yeah, it's funny. My daughter is going to college in New York next year, and I just cannot wait to travel there and catch up with old friends and stuff. But I'm not really thinking beyond that. My son would like to go to school in Japan, so if that happens, I would love to go back to Japan. That's a marvelous place to visit. Oh, you were just there.
And Amy and I have said, if this is the last trip we ever get to take, it's a hell of a one to go out on.
Oh, man. It's just the best place to travel. I spent a full year in England, and I felt antsy and nervous, and I felt more welcome in my 10 days in Japan, and better taken care of and better fed,
Yeah, well, we were very well taken care of by our hosts and had some of the most amazing meals.
Yes,
ever.
The food is phenomenal. You come back and it's a little depressing to eat here for a while.
Yeah, that was part of our thing. It was like, well, if they got to shut the world down anyway, at least we got to experience this. So
yes. And you had one of those enormous ryokan type meals with the many courses and stuff.
Yeah. We went to this place in Matsusaka where they do the beef on the table, and there's just all sorts of crazy meals one after another that we partook in.
We definitely had the beef with the cow nose print. That was pretty phenomenal. They give you a piece of paper with the pedigree of the cow that you're eating, and it's phenomenal. Yeah, it was pretty amazing. And I'd give anything. Get to New
York, I was going to say, when you get to New York, provided it's safe for people to actually sit down across a table from each other, maybe we'll get to talk again.
Oh, no, I'd love that. Or grab a meal. Yeah. I have a feeling, given the fall, that my kid will be going to college virtually, but eventually going to get there.
That's what we can hope for. Someday there'll be another ReaderCon. We'll we'll be in our containment
suits. 2021
suits.
At least.
Yeah, that might be optimistic, but there's nothing bad about optimism.
That's right.
Thanks for coming on, Kate.
Thanks very much, Gil.
That was Kate Maruyama. Go check out her website, katermaruyama.wordpress.com, to find out more about her writing, teaching, appearances, and other activities, as well as her first novel, Harrogate, which we talked about last year at ReaderCon. That's katermaruyama.wordpress.com. You can check her out on Twitter and Instagram at Kate Maruyama, so no R in either of those, and it's all one word. The Writing Better Futures in Times of Crisis event is Thursday, May 14th at 7 p.m. Pacific. You can check that out at bookswell.club. That's BOOKSWELL. And that's 2020 for you future social historians who are trying to figure out what podcasts were and why anybody would bother to make them. And again, there'll be links to all this stuff in the show and episode notes, so you'll be able to go through from there. I'll be back tomorrow with a full-length episode of the Virtual Memories Show. I did one of those instead of a COVID check-in yesterday, so you get a full hour of conversation with someone who has never been on before. Visit vmspod.com and chimeraobscura.com to find out more about the Virtual Memories Show. And you can find a link at both of those sites to the COVID-19 sessions, which has all of these daily episodes, which began March 25th, around the time I finally figured out something to do that related to the podcast and the pandemic. You can subscribe to the Virtual Memories Show via iTunes, Spotify, or whatever podcatcher you like to make sure you get every episode. The RSS feed is available on our sites, so you can do that or all of the other various ways of subscribing. Now, in the before time, I always recorded these shows in person, but now I'm using Zencastr.com to record remotely. If you're interested in that setup, visit Zencastr.com at ZENCASTR. So no final E. There's a free hobby level, but I subscribe to the $20 a month pro level because it gets me better audio quality. My Patreon supporters more than cover that, as well as the increased hosting costs from the added number of episodes I'm putting up every month. So don't give me any money. Give money to the artists, writers, creative people, people in need, anyone that you care about who could use a hand. For a lot of artists and writers, there are Patreons, Kickstarters, GoFundMes, Indiegogos, tip jars, whatever. If you don't like helping people individually and prefer to donate to a cause, go find a local charity. Your food bank is probably a great bet for that sort of stuff. Just, if you can, find a way to help right now. I'm Gil Roth. It is Wednesday, May 13th, 2020, and this was a bonus episode of my Virtual Memories Show podcast. Thanks so much for listening. Keep the conversation going, stay safe, and wash your damn hands.